I made sure to get a hold of Connor O'Gara a couple of days ago, knowing that today's Labor Day. Not everybody's working. However, when you're somebody like Connor O'Gara who covers college football with a finely toothed comb, then you're working on a Monday when Ole Miss is playing against Louisville. So that means you're working today, Connor, and we appreciate you coming on with us.
It's good to be here. I was originally going to be in Atlanta for this one. I was going to try and do a little double dip, try and hit Bama, Miami on Saturday, and then do the Louisville Ole Miss game on Monday. And then after I had a summer just filled with travel, I went to 9 states this summer once COVID kind of calmed down, or at least briefly did. And then I kind of got back from that, and I was like, you know what? I'd rather just be on my couch opening weekend and be able to watch every single game and not have to worry about all the moving parts. So I feel like I watched a billion hours of football over the weekend, and I'm not complaining about it one bit.
No, I know you're not complaining about it because this is pretty much right through your veins. So I just thought about tonight's game. We know Lane Kiffin is not coaching for Ole Miss. Came down with the virus, unfortunately. And Jeff Lebby is he taking over the whole team as head coach, or is he just calling plays offensively and they're kind of splitting things?
I think they're kind of splitting things. He'll be calling plays offensively, and it's interesting because everybody kind of, at least until the end of last year, outside of Ole Miss, you kind of thought of this as like Lane is the mad scientist, but Lebby is the guy who's really had a big part in this whole deal. And he was the right-hand man for Josh Heupel at UCF, and he's somebody that has had kind of a meteoric rise in the college football ranks and was seriously considered for the UCF head coaching job that ultimately went to Gus Malzahn. But what a massive opportunity for him tonight, because in this day and age, you have to be a great offensive mind to get one of these opportunities. And somebody like Jeff Lebby has, interestingly enough, more of a market probably at the head coaching ranks than Barry Odom. And Barry Odom is respected very much in this industry, but because of what Lebby does with offenses, and it's very similar to the concepts that Kiffin runs, to the concepts that Heupel runs with sort of that Baylor-inspired offense with the air raid principles, I think that he's just going to have a big-time showcase for him. What a weird situation that this has turned out to be, but I'm pumped. I love watching Ole Miss play football. They were a good time last year. I think they'll be a good time again this year.
Oh, man, Ole Miss football, Drew, is a Corvette ride with no seatbelt and hardly even a steering wheel. That's a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't say I love watching Ole Miss, being from Memphis, Tennessee, but they are enjoyable to watch. One team that is always enjoyable to watch, and just how did they just keep on doing it? I mean, Alabama destroys Miami. Outside of the rapper guy, I don't think anybody actually thought Miami stood a chance, and they ultimately didn't. And Bryce Young picking up exactly where Mac Jones left it, if not better. I mean, he was phenomenal.
Let the record show that Kane Brown, country artist, actually, he's a little bit of a crossover type of vibe. He was very bad on College Game Day. Let's call it what it is. It was not very good. Alabama, on the other hand, was extremely good. And I watched that game thinking that Bryce Young was going to be excellent. And I thought he was going to be on the same page as Bill O'Brien. I thought they were going to be able to put up some points, and he was going to have some great moments. He was even better, and Bill O'Brien was as well, than I thought they were going to be. And that is a scary sight. If you would just put that game film in with a montage of 2020, you probably wouldn't have been able to tell much of a difference. It was that scary. And that play to Jameson Williams, the 90-yard touchdown that he has early in the second half, that was just the absolute dagger to Miami, kind of told the story for me. You see the poise with Bryce Young. You see the way that he keeps his eyes downfield, even when pressure kind of gets on him. And that's special. And he's different than Mac Jones. He's different than Tua Tagovailoa, but some of the things he can do, man, you see all the talent on display. And then this defense, I don't know who's blocking that front seven. I have no idea how anybody is going to be able to get their hands on Will Anderson and prevent that guy from getting to the quarterback, because he was ridiculously good as a true freshman last year. And watching him against grown men on that Miami team, he took over. And this is going to be an Alabama team that, if you were underestimating them coming into this year like I was, and kind of saying, they have things to figure out, you watch that opener and you realize, this is very much a national championship contender, and they're going to be able to just bully teams throughout this season.
Well, and Georgia you've got to feel the same way about Georgia, but in an opposite way. Like, that's the way Alabama beat LSU for a national championship, or, all those years ago. It's kind of crazy to see that Georgia's playing the same. Here I was thinking, who's going to catch the ball for the Georgia Bulldogs? They don't need anybody to catch the ball. Nobody. They hardly even need to play in the offense.
They have their defensive backs for that.
Goodness gracious.
You guys, if you had told me going into that game that we're going to see a game between top 5 teams in which they're going to play 60 minutes of football in perfectly fine, normal conditions, not like a monsoon or anything like that, and there will not be a single offensive touchdown scored, you could have knocked me over with a feather, because I thought these offenses were going to light it up. And I perhaps underestimated the Georgia front against the Clemson offensive line and how big of a mismatch that would be, because the Clemson offensive line was bad last year. They were 11th in the ACC in rushing. They weren't particularly good. That was with Travis Etienne, the all-time leading rusher in the ACC. And so coming into this year, I'm thinking DJ Uiagalelei is going to be able to get some time. They're going to be able to stretch the field with Justin Ross, who was back. And instead, that Clemson front had no chance whatsoever defending Georgia's front seven. It was ugly. And that's the type of game that, if you want to be a cynic, you're going to say that the Georgia offense has a lot of problems, and they weren't able to stretch the field. That Clemson defensive line might be the best in all of college football, even better than Georgia. And they've played extraordinarily well, even though they weren't able to come out with a win. And Georgia doesn't have time to stretch the field. If you're against a front that's that good and they can get home with 4, you don't really have much of a chance to take these 50-yard chances downfield. That's just not going to be their game plan. 12 of the first 16 passes of the game went for 5 yards or less. They were getting rid of the ball quickly. They didn't want to get JT Daniels hurt. And they played a good game plan. That was a win by any means necessary type of game, and Georgia did that. And Georgia came out with what I thought was one of the best statements that we've seen from that program in a long time, the best win, in my opinion, of the Kirby Smart era.
Now, going into that game, the thought was, maybe either team could lose and still make it to a playoff. But I think the situation that happened in the ACC means there might not be a competitor out of the ACC in the playoff. I mean, their 3 top teams lost. Clemson's schedule is garbage the rest of the way. I mean, you look over at the Pac-12, and they had some teams lose, but only one of them was ranked, and they had a couple of big upsets as well. So I just felt like Saturday was absolutely disastrous for the ACC, more so than any other conference.
It was bad. Don't get it twisted. It was really bad. It's seeing the quarterback struggle, seeing Sam Howell and seeing DJ Uiagalelei and then De'Ara King. All 3 of those guys really looked like they were in over their head against better competition. And, I think that they're going to have much better days, and I don't think we should be dismissive of them necessarily. Clemson's playoff chances obviously took a hit, right? But at the same time, an 11-1 Clemson team that rolls in the ACC championship, which, if we're betting on any possible scenario, that would be the most likely still, right? I would still think that Clemson team is going to have a chance to get into the playoff. And I picked them to win the national championship going into this year. So I think better days are ahead. I think that underestimating that Georgia front and what it was going to be able to do was part of it. But I still think that they're going to be able to have a path to the playoff. It's just going to be a little bit tougher. And maybe they're going to be sitting on that 4 or 5 line late into the season. And we're talking about how legitimate their resume is. They still have a chance to pick up a couple of quality wins. NC State, Boston College are going to be better than people are kind of giving credit for. But they're not going to have that big marquee opportunity until potentially an ACC championship. And, man, I wouldn't expect anything from the Coastal. So that could be a really difficult thing for Clemson to overcome.
Drew, you watch. Dabo will be all about CFP expansion by the end of the season. Now,
100%. I feel like all of them will. But, Connor, yesterday's game was such a great game going into overtime. And if Florida State would have won it, I think Mackenzie Milton would have been the sports story of the year, if not possibly the decade, from that 2017 injury. Is Florida State and Mike Norvell's Seminoles an actual contender this year, or are they still another year or 2 away?
Nah, they're another year or 2 away. I think Notre Dame's going to be a little bit worse. I think Florida State's going to be a little bit better. I think Florida State's more like a 7-5 team this year. I don't think that they necessarily have the guys in the trenches still to be able to compete. And if they're kind of going back and forth at the quarterback position, we'll see how that works. I think a lot of people looked at that game and said, how could they have not started Mackenzie Milton after the way that he came in and performed down the stretch there? And Jordan Travis made some mistakes, but I still think that they have issues to figure out on the offensive line, and they're going to get dominated by some of these better teams up front. And Notre Dame in its first game without Clark Lee, who's now at Vandy, of course, I think that they struggled defensively, and some of the big plays, Jayshon Corbin, the former Texas A&M running back, busted through and had a big chunk play that has just kind of been hard to come by for Florida State in recent memory. I think that there are better days ahead, but everything is magnified when you're on that Sunday night stage, right? I mean, back in 2016, we're saying Texas is back when they beat Notre Dame in that thrilling game. Actually, the same day that I got married, ironically enough, and I watched that in a college bar with my entire family, ironically enough. But I think that's just kind of the overreactions that we have to week one. Florida State will be better, but I think that game showed that they still have a little bit of a ways to go, and they're not necessarily about to compete for a New Year's Six Bowl.
Well, if you watch a million hours of college football, I'll assume, and I know correctly, that you watched Arkansas beat Rice. So I'm also imagining you saw all 60 minutes instead of just the second half, which was the fun part for Arkansas fans. Thoughts on Arkansas-Rice, Connor?
Oh, boy. The Grant Morgan targeting penalty, I mean, it wouldn't be a game. Does an Arkansas game happen if they don't get at least one bogus call?
Apparently not.
I mean, like one truly horrendous call. It was like, oh, we got to get our quota. We'll get our quota in the first quarter. We got that taken care of. Good. And then the bumper pool play in the second half. I'm bummed for him that he's not going to be able to play in the first half against Texas. What an outdated, ridiculous rule that is. But I'm worried about KJ Jefferson in the passing game. I'm legitimately worried. It's one thing if you can get the ground game going against a team like Rice, sort of impose your will. I like that he competed. He came back. He fought. He was a 3-and-out away from getting benched, I think. I truly believe that. If he doesn't show up the way that he did in the second half, we're talking about this game in a much different light. But I am truly worried about some of the accuracy issues that we saw play out against Rice. Maybe it's first-game jitters, but you got to be able to figure it out because everything is going to get sped up against a team like Texas. And I think that you're going to need to see significant improvements from him in the intermediate passing game, or else it's going to be rough. You can't be one-dimensional all year. Kendall Briles, he has not built this offense to be one-dimensional, and they're going to struggle against better competition if they don't figure out that aspect. So I still picked Arkansas to beat Texas. I still think that's in the cards, but, man, I have more concerns now after seeing some of the struggles in week one.
Yeah, I think it's really 50-50 around here, Connor, if people are more confident after seeing that game or maybe a little less confident. I know one fan base that is very, very less confident after week one is LSU getting beaten on the road in the Rose Bowl against UCLA. So let me get this straight. It wasn't all Bo Pelini's fault then.
You know, if you had told me that Bo Pelini was still on the sideline calling plays for LSU, yeah, I would have said, okay, that checks out. I'm seeing the coverage breakdowns, guys running free downfield, the missed tackles in the open field. Yep, this has the smell of a Bo Pelini defense, but instead, Durante Jones in that defense really struggled. And I thought Chip Kelly kind of danced all over LSU, and it wasn't just those plays. It wasn't just like they were coming out with a bunch of trick plays and whatnot. Man, LSU got beat in the trenches. Mm-hmm. There were plays where Zach Charbonnet, the Michigan transfer, the UCLA running back, he had 8 yards at a minimum when UCLA needed it. And that's a bad sign for me. That defensive line got smoked, and I thought they were going to be a lot better this year. I thought the offensive line was going to be much better. LSU couldn't run the football, and it didn't look like they even wanted to run the football. This is a team right now that is still facing an identity crisis. I thought 2020 was going to be all in the past. I thought they were going to get over the hump with a week one win out west against a good, improved UCLA team, and that was not the case at all. They have huge questions to answer moving forward because they can throw the ball. Max Johnson and Keyshawn Butte are going to be really fun to watch, but they have so many other issues right now to figure out that anybody assuming that they were going to have a bounce back year is probably having some second thoughts about that.
You know, a little nerves if you're Mississippi State, 1 point win, storm from behind at home against Louisiana Tech.
Man, if you're down 20 points in the fourth quarter to Louisiana Tech after you've had 8 months to prepare, I get the comeback happening. That's all well and good. What does that say about your program right now? What is the identity of your team if that's how long it takes them to get going? And I thought they figured some things out in the fourth quarter. I thought defensively they were much better. I don't know how Zach Arnett's defense let Austin Kendall run for 60-some-odd yards for a touchdown. That should never happen. But I think that they still offensively look too predictable. And if they can't block a three-man front, you can't throw the football 50 times a game. And they need to be able to figure out other ways to disguise their offense because right now, if a team like Louisiana Tech is sniffing everything out and it looks too difficult on your starting quarterback, he's got these small throwing windows, that's a bad sign moving forward. I don't know if they figured some things out in the fourth quarter, but They are a team that has a tricky non-conference. They've got Memphis coming up. They've got NC State this week. They have a very grueling SEC West schedule. Man, don't sleep on the idea of Mike Leach getting some hot seat talk moving forward with the way that the contracts are set up in the state of Mississippi. Only 4-year contracts. He's only under contract through 2023. Just keep that in the back of your mind if things get ugly from Mississippi State.
Connor, appreciate you, man. Always fun doing this with you. Enjoy the game tonight, and we appreciate you laboring with us today.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Connor.
Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, national editor and national reporter, and rather we love having on here on Mondays. You can see, I don't know how he fits. He probably watched like 42 hours of football in 24 hours on Saturday. I don't quite know how you do that. Hey, this is Texas Week. It's all Hogs and Horns this week on ESPN Arkansas. It's brought to you by Arvest Bank. They provide a wide range of banking services, loans, deposits, treasury management, credit cards, mortgage loans, mortgage services, and more. You can go online to arvest.com to learn more. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Wrapping up the first hour after the break. Get with us at 877-377-6963.
It's that time of the year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. As always, BetOnline is your #1 spot for all of the pro and college football action this season. Get all of the updated odds, props, and contests, including the online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest, the world's largest 200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. Here's what you have to do. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. Take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager's going to be refunded for up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using the promo code NFL100. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.